those things. I don't know. Um, Welcome back. It is Friday, the 18th of July, 2025. Unbelievable. Time flies. We are now more than halfway through the seventh month of the year, so we're well into the second half of the year already. More than a couple weeks into it, and just yesterday, actually during the Alpha Trading live stream, it happened to be that the U.S. House of Representatives passed the Genius Act and the Clarity Act. If you're not familiar with those were bills to basically advance legislation for cryptocurrencies, including stablecoins and anti CBDC or anti central bank digital currency laws to make sure that there will not be a Federal Reserve issued central bank digital currency, which, if you are a hardcore Bitcoiner slash crypto person, the probability is pretty high that you will like that because CBDCs are basically, digital fiat currency with all kinds of tracking mechanisms on them and everything, which goes against the ethos of hardcore crypto fans. Even though, keep in mind, already most people use money electronically most of the time, certainly in the United States and in many other developed countries, right? Most of the money they spend on a daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly basis is electronic. So it is already tracked. But, for the purposes of upholding the value of having their privacy protected, um, putting a ban on CBDCs ensures that there will not be a Federal Reserve issued digital dollar effectively. But in any case, apart from that, the bills advance, or now the acts advance, to basically be signed. I think they have to go through one more step, but in any case, they're on their way to being signed into law, very likely in the coming days or weeks. Which, if they are signed into law, then you will have actual legislation regulating stablecoins, which means that there will probably be a lot of new stablecoins launching in the coming months and years. These laws will basically govern how those are allowed to exist, taking into consideration, grandfathering in the ones that already exist, like USDT, USDC, PAX, etc., PayPal, PYUSD, and a whole bunch of other stablecoins that already exist, right? DAI, right? So there are a number of existing ones, and then there's going to be legislation to govern stablecoins going forward, which is, again, that's just going to open up a whole new market for people. I mean, yes, when you have legislation, in a way, it hampers a market. But if you don't have any legislation, a lot of people don't want to enter the fray because they're afraid of what might happen if there's no regulation to protect them, etc. Right, so those are the capitalists that aren't really free market capitalists. They're, guardrail capitalists, which is perfectly fine. Like, it makes sense to have some, because if not, if you have really a chaotic free-for-all, well, then, bad people can do bad things. And if there's no laws governing it, well, it's not really illegal, right? So they might get away with it. And that's why people who have a lot of money, for example, don't want to open up stable coins in an environment where bad people might do bad things to them and they have no recourse. So by having these legislations in place, they will have some kind of recourse. They will have laws governing how they can and can't create these things and own and operate and manage them, and they will have legal recourse in case somebody violates any law or tries to thieve any of those stablecoins, etc. So this does, in a way, by creating regulation, even though technically it then limits the free market, it encourages more activity within the regulated market than you might get in the unregulated market. At least that's the theory, right? But I would argue, well, Bitcoin's not regulated, and look at what happened to Bitcoin. You've got more than 20 billion% rate of return since since its inception, since it went live on the markets trading back in 2009. And since that time, no legislation or regulation has governed it really. Yes, there are bits and pieces here of regulation that attempt to govern it within certain jurisdictions under certain conditions, but overall, Bitcoin is not regulated in any meaningful way. There are just people in certain jurisdictions who have to deal with local laws, but that has nothing to do with crypto itself, Bitcoin itself. It is a protocol that's out there, it's decentralized, and you can't really govern it, right? People can try, but good luck, because they don't have control over it. Unlike stablecoins, which would be typically centrally issued, right? In which case, like centrally by some company or whatever, in which case those are easier to govern, obviously. But fully decentralized cryptos, not so easy. And that's why, maybe arguably, one of the reasons why not having regulation and having a real free market, as you have with Bitcoin, is actually better. Because you have, the rate of return speaks for itself, more than 20 billion% rate of return in 16 years. That is a staggeringly high number, higher than any other asset that's ever been on the market. And in such a short period of time, too. So, but again, I understand why, for the most part, especially for regulated companies, you want to have some kind of regulations with new things you create so that, you can run your affairs more easily and your lawyers can know what to do in whatever situation that they're in. It makes sense, but it's not, it isn't necessarily the best solution, but it may be the optimal solution in terms of practical and realistic in terms of operating within the market and bringing in more billionaires to the stablecoin game who clearly want to create their own stablecoins and are chomping at the bit to do so, but they want legislation to do that before they do it, which I understand that. But by injecting that kind of liquidity into the marketplace, they will be basically driving the market to be buying these assets, right? Because why would they create all these stablecoins? They would create these stablecoins to let people on ramp, buy and sell cryptos. So that's going to cause a lot of buying and selling of cryptos, and that's going to mean that there's going to be a lot of demand, a lot of hopefully supply to meet that demand. But there are some coins like Bitcoin and Ethereum, which we've gone over many times, which have very low available supply at the moment, and they're only dwindling further because the biggest holders hold a lot, and they're not selling anytime soon. They have no reason to sell. They're wealthy from other revenue sources to begin with, most of them anyway, so they have no need to sell. Even if you made all your money in crypto, right, at the value that Bitcoin is or Ethereum is, if you have a lot of it, you definitely don't need to sell all of it unless you're doing something crazy with it, like selling it all in order to acquire something else, which, why would you do that? So that is the situation. Anyway, folks, I hope you all have a wonderful day and, take advantage of the opportunity, the occurrence of opportunity that this presents long term. And, happy trading. See you.